just want to know, did anyone notice where that thumbnail is from? That is from, I believe, is the first of the very special episodes that were so prevalent in the 1980s during the heyday of sitcom TV. That is the Bike Store two-parter from A Different Strokes, where Dudley gets diddled at the bike shop. It's not funny that Dudley got diddled, but Dudley's dad's mustache is funny. But I was wondering if anyone recognized where that was from. And if you did, then we're friends. Good morning to most, good afternoon to others, and good evening to the viewing audiences across the pond. I am your host, Jason Miles, here for another episode of This is Revolution Podcast. If you are new to the channel, thank you so much for joining us on what for me is a gorgeous Saturday morning, maybe afternoon for some of you. I don't know what the weather looks like, but here in Baja, it is kind of rad. If you're a returning listener or subscriber, welcome back. Fuck yeah. So glad to have you with us. We had a beyond full week of shows here on TIR. I did a midday stream with music legend David Garfield, who's from the same place our guest is from today, who's worked with everyone from Smokey Robinson to Eddie Van Halen. Check that out. It's up. The episode's called What the Hell is Yacht Rock, and part of the What the Hell series, where I interrogate genres of music that I hate the name of the genre of the music, but I love the music. So definitely check that out. We did so far we've done 2 episodes on yacht rock. Can we just get done with that? Please, it's over. Also, no Red Zone this week. Instead, I talked with journalist Ryan Zagraff on his latest about Joe Rogan and the Manosphere. And on Sunday, that's right, Sunday, I'll be talking with scholar and author Catherine Rye Jewell about the golden era of alternative music as we discuss the early years of Lollapalooza. If you guys really want, we'll do a Lilith Fair show. I feel like there's probably some good Lilith Fair writing out there that I haven't read yet. And I don't know if that festival has gotten its proper due. Did our guest today go to Lilith Fair? I'm looking at her in the virtual green room. We also have live show news. If you live in the San Francisco Bay Area and want to see us live, well, in April, you'll get your chance. Ben and I are going to descend upon my area April 17th at the El Rio, and we're going to be discussing if Trump is the end of history. I'm looking forward to seeing some familiar faces and meeting some new ones. There is a ticket link up wherever you are watching or listening to this show. There should be a link in the description. There's definitely a ticket link now up at the venue we're going to be at, the El Rio. And we gave them the promotional materials, and I do have to give a big shout out to the Quintern. We probably should stop calling him the Quintern. He's hasn't been an intern in forever. He's just part of the crew, but it's just fun to call him the Quintern. The Quintern hit me up and said, "Hey Jay, what if I did a flyer and it was Mac Dre's face but on Marx's body?" I was like, yeah, please do that. So there's a poster of that in San Francisco, and I'm so excited. So maybe people will show up. We'll see. All this being said, TIR is a listener-supported labor of love, and we can't do this without y'all. So if you enjoy what we do here on TIR and have the means and feel so inclined, become a patron for as little as $2 a month or $30 for the year. You can not only make sure we stay on air, but you can access champagne rooms, patron-only call-in shows, and more. Discounts on live events. That's right. Patrons have a special discount code for the live gig in SF. So now that's out. Wherever you're watching or listening, there's a link in the description to become a patron. If you guys want more shows or more weeks where I do 8 shows in a week, that's what you have to do. Now, let's talk the heavy weight of class mobility. And this one hit a little too close to home for me. In 1995, I vividly remember watching Chris Rock's HBO comedy special, the one that catapulted him into superstardom with his now famous N-words versus black people. We coming for you, nigga! Routine. If you're unfamiliar with this piece of comedic history, Rock riffs on a classic and deeply problematic underclass ideology, dividing black folks into good, law-abiding citizens and those who revel in chaos and ignorance. At the time, this joke hit me like a freight train because I lived that dichotomy. Growing up in Richmond, California in the mid-90s, my daily life often played out like a scene from Menace to Society or Boys in the Hood, just without Nia Long or Jada Pinkett. Violence and turmoil weren't just background noise, they were part of my landscape. And if I'm being honest, I might have participated in that so-called N-word behavior. I mean, I've yelled in a movie theater. I've loitered on a corner shooting dice. I've thrown rocks at cars for no good goddamn reason. But at the same time, I had a front row seat to a different slice of black life at my out-of-district high school. It wasn't an Ivy League prep school, but many of my classmates lived in a different world far removed from mine. For them, trouble was something you had to commute to. For me, it was right outside my window. I'll never forget the day a friend dropped me off at my dad's house in central Richmond. The next day, he told everyone at school, Jason Miles' house looked like Boys in the Hood. He was joking, kind of. But I did notice I didn't get too many rides home after that. Even though I laughed it off, there was always a nagging insecurity, this awareness of how stark the contrast was between our worlds, and that feeling of not quite fitting in anywhere. Yeah, that doesn't really go away. Our guest today, Eileen Giselle, knows this feeling all too well. Coming from humble beginnings herself, she captures the complexities of class mobility in her recent Jacobin article. Again, wherever you're watching or listening to the show, there is a link in the description to the article. The heavy weight of class mobility. She writes, no matter how much cultural capital I achieve, in my case, 2 graduate degrees, a few poetry books, a swanky award in arts journalism, the nagging feeling that I don't entirely belong persists, as does the suspicion that the tastes and privileges of the affluent people around me are not and will never be normal. At the same time, I didn't fit in around the people I grew up with anymore and often feel bad that our interests and stories no longer overlap. For over 20 years, she's learned to straddle these competing personae, what sociologist Ronald S. Burt calls identity suspension. She's performed this act so convincingly that only her inner circle has a clear sense of her working class roots, but as she puts it, it can still feel like a Cirque du Soleil act, so much effort to glitter from afar. Oof. This raises a lot of questions. While many higher ed institutions work hard to recruit students from marginalized backgrounds, does the process of polishing these students for elite spaces sand off some essential parts of who they are? Does this upward mobility come with the pressure to become a cultural ventriloquist, someone who speaks for the poor on behalf of upper class concerns about ideological deficiencies? What stops one from becoming J.D. Vance, or Ta-Nehisi Coates? Taiwo. We'll discuss. Let's get into it. Please welcome professor, author, and all-around badass, Eileen Giselle.
Hey.
How are you?
I'm good. I have to say, I really need to tune into your Lollapalooza episode, and I want to be on the Lilith Fair episode because I went to the Lilith Fair twice, and I feel like I went twice. And this is the thing. I kind of went thinking that I was too cool for the Lilith Fair. And to be frank, I was right. I was too cool for the Lilith Fair. But I totally loved and love Sarah McLachlan, and that was my big excuse. So like for all the opening acts, I would kind of like drift through and like, I don't know, dismissively acknowledge the hippies around me and the kind of granola girls around me. But then when Sarah went to the stage, I was like earnestly devoted. So yeah, I was an ambivalent Lilith goer. But I'm really glad I did it because I feel like I did experience something that was quintessentially 90s in a way that's really hard to explain to those who were not like teenagers at that time or old enough to, to realize what it was. So I'm so happy to be here again. Your show is so much fun. Also, I wanted to say that like I want you to send me that still from Different Strokes because I missed it. I missed the reference. But when you brought it up, I realized I remember the bike shop episode, and I really feel like, okay, you and I, we should co-write an essay about what did we learn about sex or like sexual transgression from like shows like Different Strokes. Or
if
like
you're being serious, I'm so stoked
I would
to write something with you. I'm
like Punky Brewster. I learned a lot of stuff. Like there were kind of like these embedded PSAs in these shows. Webster also had some embedded PSAs. So yeah, these shows, like I remember always kind of feeling more and more afraid of the world watching these shows, but then at the same time they kind of like, wrapped up and no one seemed like traumatized for life. So there was also the sense that like you could get diddled at the bike shop, but then like the next episode you could be, I don't know, shooting hoops or like hanging out with, just doing something.
Yeah, whatever. Do you remember the Growing Pains where they ended up firing the chick because she was in Playboy, and it was supposed to be a sex episode or something that was supposed to happen, and apparently Kirk Cameron got the chick fired. It was supposed to be his girlfriend.
He was Kirk Cameron. It breaks my heart because he was so cute. I mean, I'm sure maybe he still is, but like his conservatism, it really crushes me because he was just such a cute guy. He was like a very 80s approximation of white attractiveness. And he had that rebellious, playful streak that made him relatable. Anyway, show me that smile, Kirk Cameron. Show me that smile.
What show is that? Show me that smile. That's not Growing Pains. That was Show me that.
What's
smile.
that?
That's not Growing Pains though.
Show me that smile again. Show me that smile. That is totally Growing Pains.
That's not Growing Pains. Wait, is that Growing Pains?
It totally is. Joanna Kern, who plays the mom, she actually sings this. It's like a fun fact. It's sung by the two parents. They are actually singing. It's got like the montage of the photos.
Well, Alan Thicke sings the Different Strokes theme song.
Oh, really?
That's Alan Thicke singing. Yeah, Alan Thicke was a. I think he also sings on Good Times, or he wrote Good Times. Or one of
he did. No, you're right. He did, and he also did Growing Pains. And Growing Pains has the montage. And the montage, I still find the opening sequence, like the opening credits to Growing Pains, it's better than the show. Like it's so good. It's so good. It's like it's also very meta because it shows the photographs of the actors who are in the show, like through the years. So there's a sense of like false realism before you watch the show because you see photos that are actually of the actors at different ages of their lives. And then so when you're watching the show, it kind of feels like, yes, these are real people. So yeah, I learned a lot about like what
I learned a lot about. Sadly, I think we had similar lives. Were you the type of person that could tell what time it was by what was on television?
100%. I'd be like, it is 7 p.m. exactly. It is 7:30 because I hear this theme song.
Yeah. I mean, all the shows, the court shows.
Yeah. Or actually, oh my God, a memory just came back to me. So we had this little black and white TV in the kitchen, and I remember my mom would watch Night Court, and so there was that like kind of like like that sound, like beginning, and like if I heard the Night Court song, I knew that like we have to be pretending to be sleeping because if we're still awake talking and Night Court is on, my mom is gonna go down the hall and she's gonna look at my sister and I in our little bed together and she's gonna be like, get to bed, Night Court's on. And like
that's how Cheers was. Cheers and Night Court were those two shows, and I would turn the TV down. I got a TV for my birthday when I was like 10 or 11. And I
Ooh.
remember my mom was like, you have to turn it off. My mom didn't care. My mom had a bit of a problem with substance abuse. So sometimes she gave a shit, sometimes she didn't. So it's like living with the Joker. Like you never know.
Ooh.
Like sometimes it's gonna be good, or she'll kick the door open like the feds. Like, what are you doing? Enjoying yourself? I was just reading a book. Read, Shreed. You're gonna fail. Just
I
shut
love
up.
the idea of watching Night Court and having the door like kicked open.
Oh man, yeah. She would just come in mad as fuck, just spun out of her mind. Like, thanks a lot, lady. Appreciate it. Sometimes, not all the time. Sometimes my mom would be
I
like,
had a tiny TV, like a tiny black and white TV when I was like 12. I remember it was $50 at Target to buy this little TV. It was like one of the Black Friday sales or something. And it was perfect because I could put it underneath the blanket and so it was so little that you couldn't actually see that I was watching television. So I would watch like SNL and I'd watch the shows I remember I watched like an Oprah sex episode where, you know, those episodes where Oprah's like, you know, you might want to have your kids leave the room, ladies, because we're about to talk about something real. And I was just gonna like, oh, yes, we are. Like, you know, that was also like that TV made a huge contribution to any joy I experienced during adolescence, which was not a lot.
Can I ask you a question? I know this isn't what you talked about, but can I ask you a serious question? Because I think you bring something up for me personally that
oh, please.
has
I thought we
been.
were talking about serious issues, but let's get real. Let's make
Oh,
it more
look,
serious.
if you think this isn't getting clipped, I'm clipping the shit out of this. This is probably going to be the one clip that gets all the views. I'll actually have a clip of you talking about your article. No one will give a shit about that. And then I did a whole show about this guy wrote something about the anti-war movement and he mentioned AOC's name one time. So as a joke, I just put her picture in the thumbnail. That got all the views. The next clip, I make 3 clips per show. The next clip, the guy's having a more serious discussion about what happened in the anti-war movement. 75 people saw it.
Yeah.
And look, people act like they want to be serious. Like, you don't want to be serious. So look, I'm going to have fun for 5 seconds before we get into the serious stuff that I took all this time to write these questions for. But growing up in this time, I know I'm older than you, but still we're around the same age range. I'm 47.
When were you born?
77.
Okay, yeah, you're a little older than me.
I could turn on the television, and there was a time where we had like pirated cable, and I only had 2 channels in my room, and one was a local station, and the other was Cinemax.
Oh, wow!
So I watched a lot of action movies that were just softcore porn. So anything Andy Sedaris did, Hard Ticket to Hawaii, Malibu Express, Savage Beach, like all that stuff that's just boobs and ninjas and explosions, I love. But I was watching that stuff because I wanted to see like a horror movie after it, and I had no choices. There was no on-demand anything, so I was like, I'm going to sit here and watch boobs and explosions until I get to monster slashers. And then it was the same thing for like, you know, network television. I just watched every show until Cosby came on.
Oh yeah.
Do you miss that moment where you had no control over the programming?
That's a great question. I do in a lot of ways miss it. I think because there was kind of this like liminal headspace, like I'm not really watching this. Like this isn't really me. This doesn't really define me. Like I don't really enjoy hanging with Mr. Cooper, but here I am. Here I am because the fact is that the next show is who I am. Like the next show does define some really seminal part of me, or like I don't know, salient part of me. I always get seminal and salient mixed up, and that's not always good. But yeah, I feel like that I totally relate to that. So I feel like I miss that headspace. Like it's great to have the convenience of just like watching whenever you want, but I kind of like being in that liminal zone where you're just like, this is not really my show. But I don't dislike it so much that I'm not going to like at least have it on and acknowledge it. And you kind of get in this nice space of just like, I don't know, you're thinking about other things at the same time. And I don't know, I also kind of miss that sense of superiority. Like, I'm too good for the show. It was kind of like the opening
Yeah.
acts to Sarah
Yes.
McLachlan at the Lilith Fair, where I was like, I'm too good for this. I'm too good for this, but here I am. Here I am.
You know what? I'm trying to get more music guests, and I got one of your hometown heroes, David Garfield, who you probably don't know, but he's written songs for Smokey Robinson. He was George Benson's band director. He was in a group called Charisma with all the Toto guys. He's done shit with Michael McDonald, another St. Louis fucking legend. In my opinion, the greatest white man of all time. Shout out to Michael McDonald. Who's a better white man than Michael McDonald? I don't know. There's not one. There's not one. When Michael McDonald appears, speaking of shows, when Michael McDonald and the Doobie Brothers appear on What's Happening Now, 40 million black people became Doobie Brothers fans.
Wow. I need to check this out. I don't know anything about this, Jason. Nope. I know nothing.
It should be on YouTube.
Did you ever watch the show?
Did you not watch black shows?
That's a good question. I feel like sometimes, like, well, okay. Also, it depends on what you call a black show, because as you know, in the 80s and 90s, there was so much mass media that was very black. Like, Different Strokes is just one example, but like A Different World, like isn't actually kind of interesting.
Before that,
start with different.
Because right, you have to let them know you're boys with a Z, because that means that you're black, right? So spell it wrong and a little crooked. Moesha, because her name just can't be Heather, because no black women are named fucking Heather. To this day, I'm mad at that show. Could have been called, the woman's name in the show is Brandy. That's her real life name. Her brother's name is Raymond. That is their real names. You didn't have to N-word it up.
That's really funny.
You could have called, you know how many, I told someone the other day, they said something about Karens. I was like, look, every Karen I know is black or Filipino. I'm going to have to ask you to stop calling people Karens, because I just think of angry black women and Filipino women with shitty attitudes as well. So it's not white women. I don't think I know a white Karen. I know a fuck ton of black ones. So just stop. Just stop.
Oh, okay. Let's go back to the question about black shows, because I think this is a really interesting question. And I think it also maps onto some interesting questions about generational differences in terms of TV shows. Because think about it, like if you were like, lots of white people were watching A Different World, obviously, because it was like right around the Cosby Show. So I don't consider that a black show just because it had a huge white mass audience. But I also know for a lot of black folks, that show meant a lot. I mean, it was one of the first shows that really represented like black students in higher ed, and like who were well-adjusted.
Oh, I had friends that went to now we call them historically black colleges because of Different World. But Cosby is this interesting thing because to me, it's a black show, even though he has a lot of multi-ethnic guests on the show. And I think he's trying to show different aspects of quote unquote black life. Like, there's positives about that show that you just can't deny.
I mean, so I wanted to be Rudy. Rudy was like my age. He's the youngest kid, right? So Rudy, Keisha Knight Pullum was like a hero of mine. In fact, I even tried to get a Keisha Knight Pullum t-shirt made with my best friend in college. I don't know if that would have gone well as far as wearing that around, but I absolutely adore her. I don't know what happened to her in her career, but this is the thing. The Cosby Show also was misleading. Let's take it back to the heavy issues of race and class. Mm-hmm. So for me, watching the Cosby Show in like working class St. Louis as a white person, I saw the Cosby Show and I saw them living in their beautiful house in New York City. Mm-hmm. And they've got amazing clothes, and the dad's a doctor and the mom's a lawyer. Oh, mm-hmm. And the biggest sign of wealth to me was the fact that they had that swinging door that, like, when you left the living room and you went into the kitchen, you didn't even, like, the door went both ways. It was just like a marvel. Like, who has a door like that? The Cosbys do. So For me, Jason, I had, because of the Cosby Show, the image of typical Black life in America was wealthy cosmopolitanism in places like New York City.
Mhm.
So it was confusing to me because I was also going to public schools at the same time that desegregation was at its height in St. Louis. So there were a lot of Black kids at my school, maybe like 25%, maybe 20%. And I thought all of them were rich. I totally thought all of them were living the Cosby dream. I had no idea that like the class backgrounds usually were not like that. And so Cosby Show really confused me, especially in like the mid 80s, about like the difference between class and race and everything. Like I genuinely thought that most Black people were just like living the Cosby life. And I felt envious. I was kind of like, they have all this stuff that I want to have.
Well,
So,
remember when Theo wanted to go to the real world and then they took
oh
everything out of the
yes,
house? And there was things that show did that was like no family. I don't give a fuck what color you are, is
yeah.
going to that level to teach their child a lesson about the real world. And if you are willing to go to that level, then you're probably a pretty good parent. And if you know the history of that show, I believe Bill Cosby's doctorate is in family something, and he brought a friend in as a consultant, and that's why they add a child the second year, because they wanted to show how their parenting pays off, because originally they only have 4 kids, then they have 5. Was it
Oh,
or
that's right.
they had 3.
Was it
They had Theo,
Sandra? Was it Sandra who was missing, or was it Jazz? Not Jasmine Guy. It was
it was Sandra. Yeah, Sandra was gone, and then the second season there's older sister Sandra that goes to Princeton. So the whole thing was to show, if you do this right, then all of your kids will, go to good schools and live a
I
decent life.
see.
So the whole show was really about parenting. But what's also another thing that show is trying to do, especially with someone like Bill Cosby, who really believes in underclass ideology, is that he wants to destroy what was Black television before that, which he never really
Okay.
participated in anyway, right? I mean, this guy,
Yeah.
in the height of government involvement in taking out Black movements, this fool plays a spy. So he really isn't the biggest fan of things like the Panthers. But Cosby does hate the image of Black people on TV that's told by white people. So for a show like Good Times, for example, I don't think the dad on that show ever has a job. And
Mm,
there's so many episodes in the first few, and John Amos leaves the show because he hates it. And there's so many episodes in the first few seasons where it revolves around him having to do something nefarious to pay rent. Like, James, don't get the pool cue. Like, that was so, like, so often. And then like the pool cue is put away for like break in case of emergency. Penny's Janet Jackson's getting the shit beat out of her by Kim Field's mom across the hall. It's this Black show that's supposed to show Black life told through the lens of a well-off Jewish guy. Problematic. By the time you get to Cosby, what's the main critique? This is not real Black life. And there's some truth to that. In New York in 86, you're going to tell me none of these kids are going to ever face any sort of racism, as neighborhoods are gentrifying, and not in that way people think, where you have some Black Americans moving into Italian spaces, and there's some murders
yeah.
that happen in New York in the 80s. So Cosby is devoid of that. Even the last episode is happening during the riots.
Oh my God, that's right.
They
Yeah.
say nothing about it. So that's kind of his thing.
Yeah.
He doesn't really want to touch on certain things. So after Cosby's done, no more Cosby, but we want to be Cosby-ish. So you get stuff like
Mm-hmm.
Family Matters. Family Matters is supposed to be
Exactly.
the Cosby Show, but quote unquote working class. I watched an
Exactly. Because the
interview.
dad's a cop. Because
The
he's a
dad's a
cop. Yeah.
cop, but
It's
it
It's
becomes the Urkel
Chicago.
show eventually. They
Yeah.
tried. That lightning doesn't necessarily strike twice. I think the conditions around
No.
it were perfect. But what comes after Cosby is like, we got Negroes in space, Moesha in South Central. Look at Black people. We got to make sure there's a Z at the end. Like, Living
Z at the end,
Single.
that's a real motif there. Yeah. Z at the
Living
end.
Single is a great show that I think follows in that tradition to some extent, but
Yeah.
it's forgotten in the annals of time for a lot of people because it becomes Friends. That show, word for
Oh,
word,
yeah.
I believe that he filmed on the same set. It's just Friends. When that show ends, Friends starts. We'll do a white version of Living Single, and the rest is history.
Can we
But
just pause for a moment to just acknowledge the rare beauty of Lisa Bonet? Like I just looked her up now. I still think I thought she was the most beautiful person ever. Like full because like Rudy, played by Keisha Knight Pullum, was like the best kid ever because I was a kid,
yeah,
right? But Lisa Bonet was a teenager, and I thought she was the most beautiful person who ever existed. And I just looked her up, and she still is. Like she's just ridiculous looking.
it's
And
not fair. Yeah.
did you notice? Did you notice that at the end of the Cosby Show, Lisa Bonet's character, um, she like she goes on kind of like a more bohemian path. I think she even has
Yeah.
dreads for a time.
Yes.
And so there are these subtle ways that like she represents maybe even kind of like a sloughing off of her bougie background. Like she's kind of
Mhm.
rejecting it in a way. I didn't understand any of that at the time, but I think, I don't know, looking back on it, I think that character was almost like the flip side to Sandra, who goes on to Princeton and
And that's not what they wanted with her. She's from the Bay Area, actually. Lisa Bonet is
mm,
from the Bay.
oh, that doesn't surprise me. Yeah.
She had got with an upstart musician that was somewhat popular in the LA scene that is a child of what you young people call nepotism.
Hmm.
His name was Romeo Blue, and he was a Prince wannabe.
Mm.
It didn't really kick off for him until he kept his original name, Leonard Kravitz.
Yeah.
So Lenny Kravitz was a big no-no for the Cosby people and really pissed them off when she got pregnant with now megastar Zoe
Right,
Kravitz.
Zoe. Yeah.
They were like,
Sometimes I
we
watch
made a
Zoe just because I like to see echoes of Lisa.
Lisa and like two of the most beautiful biracial
Seriously.
people.
I mean, it's just like, yeah. No, I didn't know that pissed off Cosby. I mean, I'm not
Yes.
surprised, but
She did a nude scene
I
in
mean,
a movie called Angel Heart. She
Angel
stepped
Heart.
away and they said, don't do the nude scene. Like he forbade her from doing the nude scene. And she was like, you can fuck right off, do what I want to do. And the nude scene, Lenny Kravitz, she pushed a lot of buttons wrong. They tried with Different World. It didn't work with her. They write her out of the show. And then that show actually takes off. I think the writing got better
Yeah.
without her. And it's not a knock on her as a person or an actress. I think she's very good at acting. I found out recently my cousin, her and Lisa Bonet were the only black people on their block that burned down in the Palisades.
Oh, wow. That's so
Yeah.
sad.
Yeah.
Oh, no. I hate the idea of Lisa Bonet's house burning down.
Well, I hate my cousin's house burning down because it's my cousin. But yeah, Lisa
I don't
Bonet's
care
too.
about your cousin, though. Like, I only care about Lisa right now. I just looked her up. She's still beautiful. I still
I'm
have
trying to get hooked up, dude. I think she's married to somebody right now, but I don't know how serious it is. Come on, Lisa Bonet.
yeah.
You're not afraid to go younger.
Well, she's made great choices in the past, so.
She was with Jason Momoa, dude. She was with
Oh, she
Jason
was?
Momoa. She was. They were married. What? That makes me think she might be crazy. It's the misogynist in me is like, one time is one thing. Twice? I don't know,
Yeah.
Lisa. Maybe
I
you're a
didn't know that
problem.
about I didn't know about that. I knew
Yeah.
about Lenny.
Yeah.
All right.
And he tried so hard to get back with her.
Yeah. All right.
His
So,
biggest song is about, apologizing for cheating on her.
ooh.
It Ain't Over Till It's Over is his apology for getting caught cheating by another light-skinned person, Nana Cherry. Nana
I would
Cherry
never
told.
cheat on Lisa Bonet. No.
Why would you? Because she's crazy.
I don't know, but I feel like the reason not to cheat would also be because she's crazy. Like, what will happen to you if you cheat?
I
No,
mean,
seriously.
she cut him smooth the fuck off. That's the most regular woman shit in the history of regular woman shit. Yeah, I know who the fuck you are, Lenny Kravitz. Nope, cutting you smooth the fuck off. Peace. Didn't give a fuck. That's bad. To me, that's badass.
I think it's
Because
badass too. She always had that kind of edgy demeanor to her, even when she was like, you know, playing like a 15-year-old or whatever it was on the Cosby Show.
when she made Theo's shirt, the Gordon Gartrell shirt. It's
I don't know if I
into
remember
my
this episode.
socks. That's the great, like those episodes on that show. I won't necessarily say they're relatable, but I feel like when you're a kid, like I had grown out of my clothes and I didn't get new school clothes going into high school. And I had a growth
Yeah.
spurt from 8th grade to 9th grade.
No.
So my mom was like, you can fit. I was like, I can't. So I was literally like popping out of the seams. I remember my best friend's older sister would try to sew the seams of my shirt.
No.
Because I was like just popping out of them. So I definitely related to the, we'll turn this thing into a new thing on the Gordon
Yeah,
Gartrell.
I have that a little bit in terms of like we didn't get any new clothes like pretty much ever, but I always loved fashion. So like when I was able to save up any money at all from like the different odd jobs I did, and I was very entrepreneurial in my day. I'd like create perfume in the basement and sell it door to door. And it wasn't really perfume. It didn't even smell that good. But like I would always find ways to try to make a little bit of money. And when I did, I would go to like TJ Maxx and I would buy I kind of had my own little capsule wardrobe going on because I would buy one thing and then I would wear it almost every day, but in a different way because I didn't have a lot of cool clothes. But like I would try to fool people into thinking that like it was and I actually got pretty good at it. So I had this one like denim ruffle skirt that I found all these different ways to like style. And
Was
yeah,
it
there was a
acid
lot you could
wash?
do. It was acid wash. It was an acid wash ruffle skirt. And like I could like put it higher up in my waist. It had an elastic waist, so I could put it higher up in my waist, lower down my waist. I could like put some scrunchies on it. I could like tie it in a way. Like I did all sorts of things so it looked a little bit different. And yeah, I had certain things I would wear again and again, but I had to restyle them in different ways. And I think actually that was a good practice for like real life. Like I'm a very efficient traveler now because I don't bring a lot of things. I just kind of like, put them together in different ways. But yeah, the Cosby Show was relatable in certain ways. I think the squabbles between the children were relatable. Like
Yeah.
their squabbles seemed
Yeah.
relatable. And I feel like I don't know. I guess maybe I was not an adult, so I didn't see the parents as relatable at all. But I think maybe for some parents, like Claire and Cliff had kind of a relatable dynamic.
No, it was
Um,
aspirational. It was an aspirational dynamic
yeah,
that
it
you
seemed kind
can
of aspirational.
love
I
your
always felt,
spouse after 5 children and
yeah,
have a certain
exactly.
kind of passion for that person after 5
It
children.
seemed like they always had this kind of like, remember how at the end of the show, a lot of times they'd be underneath the blanket, and
Mhm.
like Claire would always be complaining about Cliff's cold feet. She'd always be like, "Get your cold feet away from me." And I remember just kind of being like, why are they even sleeping together? Why aren't they in the same bed? Like she seems like she really doesn't want him around. Like I remember just thinking that Claire was way too good for Cliff. Like she was too beautiful and too successful for him. And I kind of wanted her to have a spin-off though, but like
That
that
was part of
obviously,
his casting. He wanted someone that spoke multiple languages, and Felicia Allen,
oh
Debbie
wow.
Allen's sister, right, actually does speak fluent Spanish. And so
Wow.
when he cast her, they were like, "This is the woman." I think his wife might even have, Camille Cosby, actually might have helped in the casting as well. Um, the dynamic to them is pretty interesting because as you live a real life, especially if you think about two people with serious jobs like that, one is a trial lawyer and the other is a
Yeah,
neonatal physician or whatever the fuck he was supposed to be,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
You're probably going to have crazy schedules And there's going to be moments where it's like, but there were shows about don't wake your father. He had a long night. He had a long delivery. Remember
That's
those
true.
shows?
Yeah.
You would think that they, to your point, they wouldn't have the same room. I know married couples, my ex-in-laws, you know, my father-in-law slept in a different room for years because he snores.
Yeah.
That was never a problem on that show. So I totally understand what you're saying, that why would they stay in the same room, especially after 5 kids? You're just gonna be like, I got something to do. I don't want to be
But
next
there
to you in
was
your
a
cold feet.
sense there was this chemistry between them. And I have to say, like, because of all the stuff that like came out about Cosby, which was so like, you
Yeah.
know, surprise, not surprise. Ooh, yeah, Roseanne was relatable too. I was gonna say Roseanne was relatable in a lot of ways, but I also felt like, you know what? It's interesting. I almost kind of wonder if part of the reason why I didn't like watching Roseanne was because it was so relatable. Like I wanted there to be something aspirational. No, seriously, I wanted there to be something aspirational to the content I absorbed. And
Mhm.
yeah, although I should say my parents, even though I grew up in lower middle class and working class, like economic background, my parents were both college educated. So I feel like that made a difference in terms of like some of the stuff. Like, I don't know. And Roseanne, like my mom definitely, she was not like that mom at all. She was though like that mom because she was really loud and kind of abrasive. That
What do you
part.
mean you didn't eat a loose meat sandwich?
No, actually, no, I did eat a lot of loose meat sandwiches. Like we actually lived off. I actually have Carl Budding in the Jacobin essay just because Carl Budding was just the cheapest lunch meat you could buy. That was basically a staple of my diet my entire childhood, and it was disgusting. But so yeah, I kind of related to, maybe I related to that part, but I think maybe it's because my mom was so loud and abrasive every day. Like, why would I want to watch a show where another mom's like that? Like, I was just kind of like, I wanted to
Yeah.
escape.
Yeah, I watched Roseanne, and I don't know why. I did watch it, and that's how I felt. My mom yelled a lot. I wasn't joking about coming in the room like the feds. That's a real thing that
Oh,
I did.
I know you were joking. I
Um,
like Darlene though. Darlene was a good
Maybe
character
that's
in
what it was.
Roseanne.
There was something about Darlene because Becky annoyed the shit out of me too.
Becky was awful. Both Beckys, because you know they had the recasting. I didn't like either Becky. I thought they were both Beckys. Beckys were Beckys. They weren't great.
Yeah,
Um,
and what's the kid's name? DJ. He didn't really do shit.
DJ was a twerp. He was like, just get him off. Like he wasn't endearing in any way.
It was Roseanne and her sister. That was where the
Oh yeah.
for me the conflict and turmoil in good shows where it was Roseanne and her
That was
sister.
actually kind of interesting. Their relationship was interesting. Yeah.
Someone says
So
y'all couldn't get your cold cut slice at the corner store. I don't know what corner store was by you, Timothy Cornerson, but I'm from a place that does not have those places. So no,
it's so
no,
funny.
that is not what. Can I
Wasn't there
ask
a
you
place
this?
called the Lunchbox? The Lunchbox was the
That
restaurant they
was their
served.
restaurant. That was where they had the loose
Yep,
meat
the
sandwiches, right?
Lunchbox. Yeah, the loose meat sandwiches.
The only places I want to go to was the loose meat sandwich place and the Regal Beagle from the Three's Company. I really want to go to the Regal Beagle. I
That's
love
really funny.
Three's
I forgot
Company.
about that place.
Love Joyce DeWitt will still get it. Damn, she was fine.
Joyce DeWitt is actually a really fun name to say. Joyce DeWitt,
Isn't
like
she
that.
from St. Louis? She's from somewhere in the Midwest.
Ooh, now I want to look this up. I don't know. I remember who she is though, of course. American actress. Is she from St. Louis? We'll find out.
She's from somewhere in the
We weren't
Midwest.
really allowed to watch. No, she's from West Virginia.
She's from
We
West
weren't really allowed to
Virginia?
watch it.
That
Oh yeah,
explains all
Wheeling,
the
West
ass.
Virginia. And she grew up
There's a lot of
in
ass in West Virginia.
She did
I
grow
don't
up in
know
Indianapolis though. I mean, it's far from St. Louis, but it is a Midwestern town. But
if it's the
yeah.
inbreeding or the diet. There's a lot of ass in West Virginia. I don't know what it is. If you don't know, now you know. It's gonna be an influx of Negroes now in West Virginia. We heard on some color show. There's a bunch of big butted white women out here just walking around with no job, bare feet. No. Let the hate flow, West Virginia. Let the hate flow. Actually, one of these pictures here is in West Virginia. This picture right here of me flinging this guitar over the head of my ex
Oh, that's so cool.
is is in Parkersburg, West Virginia. I will never forget that night. That was the night that someone walked up to her and said, since you guys are leaving after the night, we won't fuck that guy up.
Oh no.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
True
Wow.
story.
I feel like there's no way to segue from that. Like
There is. Before we even get into your article, you have a book of poetry.
Oh, okay. I don't know how it's related to your Is it Parkersburg?
Parkersburg, West Virginia. Yeah.
Okay, I can't relate it to your Parkersburg story. So actually, I was thinking about how, in some ways, the book does connect to the themes of the show, because the book is a book of poetry, and it's inspired and informed by the work I've done as a film critic. I've written a lot about French film, and I've interviewed a lot of French and Francophone directors and actors like Juliette Binoche, Isabelle Huppert, Celine Sciamma. And I feel like for me, Francophilia is kind of a way that I felt like I had access to something like rarefied and highbrow in culture. And so I feel like in a way it helps explain why I gravitated towards like French stuff. I think because I kind of intuited that it was just fancy. And so I'm not fluent in French or anything like that, but I've definitely gravitated towards a lot of its media. And so, yeah, the book is Franco-Filaments. It's from Broken Sleep Press, and it's got a lot of language play. It's got a lot of sexy poems. If you like the sexy French movies, you might like some of the poems. And you might like some of the poems anyway, even if you don't like French movies. But that was, I think, I don't know, French culture was a kind of way for me to feel like I was I don't know, had access to something more elevated than even highbrow culture in the United States. So I think there's part of it that is very escapist for me too, just because um, French culture is so different than anything that I grew up with or knew. So yeah, that's it.
Even though you're from
That's
Saint Louis.
That's right. And actually, I do have some poems in here about St. Louis individuals, or St. Louis like related individuals like Tina Turner or Josephine Baker, who got the hell out of St. Louis and moved to Europe. Like Josephine Baker, is beloved in France. So I have a poem for her in the book, and I also have a poem for Tina Turner, who did this amazing photo shoot in 1990 with Peter Lindbergh in Paris when she was 50 years old. Check out the photo shoot she did. It's so amazing. Her solo career is about to take off. She's left Ike. She's left that behind. And one of the things I didn't realize, but then I did when I was researching the book a little bit, is that Tina was more embraced as a solo artist in Europe than she was in the United States, which since I was a kid, I didn't realize. Wasn't really paying attention, but I think that's fascinating. So no wonder she chose to like settle down and like stay in Switzerland. I think she died in Switzerland. So, and I think when she
Well,
died,
she
a lot of
married a
Americans.
guy, and
She did.
I mean, look, she also owed quite a bit in taxes.
Okay, there's maybe
And
also
she was
that.
like, you can all, and the way she handled it was very rock and roll. It was very punk rock. She was like, you and your country can get motherfucked. All
Exactly.
the
Yeah.
shit I went through as a
Yes.
negress in the States, and now you want to get motherfucked to the fucking nth
That's a little
degree.
bit how I don't actually say like Tina was like, you get motherfucked, but the end of the poem is kind of like that. The end of the poem is actually kind of like that in terms of like just like rejecting a country that fucked you over, which she did, you know? So yeah. So there's some poems that in the book that are also about like expats. Also Barbara Chase Rabu, amazing Black American polymath, like novelist, artist, just brilliant person. She's like in her late 80s now. She's been living in Paris for a long time. So there's a poem for her. There's all poems about a lot of, white chicks too, like I don't know, like Adele Exarchopoulos or Virginia Fira, like
Joni Mitchell.
different.
Is there a
There's
poem
no
for
Joni
Joni
Mitchell.
Mitchell?
She doesn't have any
No?
French connection. No, they all have like some kind of French connection.
Okay.
So,
I'm
yeah,
sure
a
there's a lot
nice
of French white
poem.
women. I don't know any.
Ooh, I can bring this back to the kind of lefty sensibility. There's also a poem about like May 68 and like
Mm.
the Godard film Tout va bien, which has Jane Fonda in it, which is like kind of a critique of what's going on in Paris in terms of like factory strikes and the tensions that are going on.
Mm.
I actually taught Tout va bien in a Missouri prison. I got it through the warden. I don't think the warden even wanted just watch the film because there's like full frontal nudity in it. But I taught it in a Missouri prison like maybe 6 years ago. So the poem is kind of based on like the weirdness of teaching this like film about May 68 in the men's prison.
You were in
Um,
Jesus Christ.
so I
You were
taught for
in
3
the
years.
men's prison?
I taught for 3 years at Missouri Eastern Correctional Center. So MECC.
You have cast iron stones. I don't care what anybody says.
What's that?
You have cast iron stones. Balls.
I guess I'll
Big ovaries.
maybe.
Big fucking
I mean, maybe
bronze ovaries.
I was more afraid at the prison of the guards. The guards were really, there was actually a guard whose name was Miss Law. Her name was Miss Law. And she would interrupt the class and she'd be like, hands on the table. And I was like, they don't have their hands on the table. They're fine. And she would like disrupt the class. And I had to ask her to leave the class. I'd be like, I'm sorry. Like, this is actually really disruptive. Like, we're trying to learn here. And like, she was like, I'm trying to protect you. And I was like, I don't think any of these guys are trying to masturbate right now. Like, I feel like I would notice. Like, I have eyes. Because that was why there was the hand on the table rule. It was like, but yeah, so it was an interesting experience. I will say, if you teach in a prison or you spend any time in a prison, you will never again take for granted opening doors freely. Like that is it's a beautiful feeling to just like sail through a door, to not have to go through some kind of security, to not have to like just going through doors is just something we take for granted. It's a wonderful thing. The other thing, that prison taught me a lot as far as like, class divisions and how like there was such an interesting group, like the way that friendships would form in the class between urban Black men and rural white men who you would think have nothing in common. And some of the rural white men had belonged sometimes to white gangs, white supremacist gangs. But once they got into like, the sociology class or this English class, like some of them are like become friends. And like, I just realized like the thing that almost everyone had in common is poverty. That's the thing almost everyone had in common is a background in poverty. And that was something I tried to explain a lot to people, especially within like liberal academia. A lot of people in like academia love to assume that all of my students were just like, they were all in there for drug offenses. I was like, no. A lot of them were like sex offenders or like did violent shit. Like they did bad things. Like
thanks, Michelle Alexander. Yeah, thanks, Michelle.
I mean, it was kind of like, I was like, yes, some of them drugs were related, but like, selling firearms, that's a big one. Like there were just like all sorts of things. So that was interesting too, just because like I realized how white liberals especially really like to hold on to this myth that almost everyone in prison is there for drug offenses. And make no mistake, I am anti-carceral as fuck. Like I'm more anti-carceral now after having taught in a prison. But that being said, it's a delusion to think that, oh, everyone's there for like smoking weed or something like that. I think that's a story that people like to tell themselves because it makes them feel better about being anti-carceral.
Well, and it
whereas,
also teaches,
go ahead.
No, I was gonna say it also teaches a certain stratum of person that gets around these people to be like, all I was doing was selling a couple of rocks to feed my family because we had 18 niggers in the kitchen all looking, daddy, will you feed us? And I couldn't do nothing because the school system was racist and wouldn't let me read. So therefore, ergo.
I mean, I think that like the thing is, I have no doubt, and I've told this to some of my students who are out of prison now and I'm friends with, and they were like, in St. Louis and thankfully out of the carceral system. I believe that if I were born into certain conditions, especially if I was born in a man's body, if I was a guy, I would not be surprised at all if, with my sensibility, I would have been behind bars. Because, like, I did all sorts of things. Like, I feel like there's ways that I would have gotten in trouble. But because I was like an overachieving, petite white girl, I feel like there were ways that I was able to kind of, I don't know, skirt any of that. But I think if I had been born in different circumstances, I would totally be in jail.
You think you would
At
have
least at
shanked
some
somebody at a
point.
bar? You think you would have shanked somebody at a
I
bar at
just
least once?
there's so many things I can imagine myself doing. Like, I did a lot of things as a little kid that were just like, there was a time that I in preschool where during nap time I jumped on the stomach of the boy who was bullying me when he was napping. He was lying on his back and I just jumped on his stomach. Like, if I was not a little white girl and I did that and this was like the path for me,
Mm-hmm.
I'd be tossing the paddy wagon. Like, there's
You
just
would have been in those classes that aren't connected to the school. Eileen graduated at 16 because she was advanced. No, she just turned in her packets of work before everyone else.
She was, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I feel like I've always there are so many ways I learned how to behave, right? I learned how to behave. I learned how to not get in trouble. But if I had been in different circumstances with my personality, I don't think that would have gone well for me. So, yeah. So
Well,
you
let
have
me
come
ask
up
you.
with questions about my
I
essay.
came up with a few. I was
Okay.
talking because in reading your piece, you quoted a mutual friend of ours, Bertrand Cooper.
Oh, that's right. I put Bird in at the end. Yeah, that's right.
You put Bert in at the end, and I appreciate that because I want Bert to be the biggest name in this literary world. So finish the book, Coop.
We want to be hanging with Mr. Cooper.
I want to be hanging with the real Mr. Cooper.
Yeah, it's true.
Not Mark Curry. I don't want now this. Look, Mark Curry, I have no beef with you. I've run into Mark Curry before. I'm not trying to see this Negro. I got to go to the Bay Area next month.
He's pretty tall, isn't he? Like, isn't that part of
He's
his thing?
tall. Yes, he's a tall.
Yeah.
He's a real black dude. He's not a Hollywood one. I'm not trying to get smacked in the face with them big ass basketball gripping hands. Because I said he mistook some shit I said. Look, Mark Curry, I don't got no fucking problems with you, okay? Fuck. Don't send your goons either.
I don't either, Mark. I didn't either.
Yeah, hey, mess with this white woman with blue hair. That's all the trouble you need. Don't fuck with me. Yeah. Bad enough I got the Nation of Islam and the Hebrew Israelites ready to fuck me up. I can't have comedic niggas that are 6'4" trying to fuck me up. It's too much. It's too much, Mark Curry.
Oh gosh. Okay.
This is what I do to make my mom proud. So let me ask. So when working class students enter elite spaces, how much of their identity gets compromised in the process? And do they become, or I'll add this to it, do they become polished ambassadors for their communities, or does this process alienate them from their roots?
I think both. So first of all, I want to give a shout out to Melissa Osborne, who authored the book Polished that came out about a year ago. So I wrote the Jacobin piece in part responding to their book because they came to WashU. They did this lecture about like the changing demographics at a lot of elite institutions. And when I was there, I went to this lecture because I had noticed that my own students at WashU were changing in demographics, and there were a lot more students from working class and lower middle class backgrounds. And for a long time, that wasn't true at my university. And so I attended the lecture that Melissa Osborne gave, thinking that I was going to learn something about my students. And that what was really fascinating, Jason, is that as I listened to them talk, I realized this is also about me because I related a lot more to these stories of these working class and lower middle class students than I due to most of the narratives that my academic colleagues have of their childhood or coming of age. And so I realized going to this lecture that, wait a second, like I was going as a faculty member thinking this was going to be about me learning about my students. But then I realized like this isn't like the first time I realized this, but I think when I was thinking back to my own experience going to college, and the choices I made and how class, really shaped the direction of the rest of my life, it made me realize that, okay, I have something to learn about myself by reading this book. So I read the book, and then the Jacobin piece was responding to the book, but it was also kind of excavating my own background and like, what was it like for me to be polished? What was it like to be from the background I was in? And then I did not go to a super elite liberal arts, or excuse me, super elite college or university. I was accepted to a few, but I couldn't afford to go. And my parents were not willing to put any money in. And we didn't want to take on loans. I didn't want to take on loans. So I've reflected on this though, because I feel like, yesterday I mentioned like higher ed's like under attack, it's falling apart, all sorts of shit going down.
Yes.
So it felt weird yesterday, like the same day that Colombia capitulates to like the Trump administration, like a dark day. No matter what you think about, the hypocrisies or just corruption within academia, which there's plenty of it, I still feel like Colombia capitulating to the Trump administration yesterday was just like, it's a fucking dark day. And that's also the day I found out I got promoted to teaching professor, which is not a tenure line. I'm not a tenure professor, but it is basically recognition of the fact that I've taught at the institution for a very long time and have a certain level of seniority. So as I posted this to Facebook, and I could tell that some of my family members who are responding, like for me to be a professor at WashU is simultaneously a point of pride, but also something alienating, something that puts a chasm between us. Because a lot of my family members don't have college degrees, or if they do have college degrees, they're from state schools or community colleges. Most of my cousins went into jobs that were much more practical, like pharmacist, nurse. There are no academics in my family. So I think this is also, the essay also kind of thinks about how higher education, like becoming a faculty member within higher ed, like being part of academia, is really, really rare for people from working class and lower middle class backgrounds. And I actually, in the research I did to write the essay, I discovered there's like this WashPo piece I embed. There's another research study that I embed in the piece that talk about how even as undergraduates in higher education become more economically diverse, and sometimes especially at like really elite institutions, there have been more and more economically diverse student bodies, which is, I think, overall a good thing. That hasn't been true for the faculty. So faculty now at elite institutions, and I think faculty at universities in general, are more likely now than they were like 50 years ago to be from a wealthy background. So you have like a diversifying student body, but then you have teachers who are more and more and more likely to be from the upper middle class. So it's really unusual to have someone who's not. And I think maybe even especially in the humanities, because the humanities isn't as lucrative generally as a field. It can often be harder to get a job in the humanities, the social sciences as well. So in my own experience, I mean, this is anecdotal. I don't have any empirical, or I don't have any like research I've conducted on this, but I feel like anecdotally, I feel like there are certain branches of academia that do attract more working class and lower middle class folks because of the fact that the trajectory to professional success is clearer and more accessible. Whereas in the humanities, especially, that trajectory to financial solvency is really hazy. It's really not present. So for people who do not come from families that can help subsidize their professional trajectory or help subsidize them when they were in grad school or something like that, it can be very, very hard to become established in the humanities. So I I do feel like, I'm really glad you read the quote about the Cirque du Soleil act, because in a way, Jason, I don't feel like imposter syndrome, like, oh, I'm not good enough. It's not like that. I've always felt good enough. I'm maybe too good, honestly. I've always had an arrogance problem. Like, you could talk to my preschool teacher, after I jumped on Michael Boyd's stomach. But I feel like it's not imposter syndrome so much as it is feeling like I don't belong, because I'm kind of like, this isn't normal. It's not normal to have access to this kind of resource or access to this kind of resource. And the way that a lot of people from these backgrounds talk about all sorts of things, whether or not it's vacation, or whether or not it's going to a wedding, or whether or not it's going to some kind of lavish, like, 70th birthday party, like, it becomes normalized. And so I also feel like, I don't want to get too deep into this, but with the way that our country has become ever more polarized politically, those from wealthier backgrounds who tend to be on the more progressive liberal side, they really often don't know anybody who is conservative. And so there's a way also that, like, I mean, I remember during the COVID pandemic, I would hear colleagues say all the time, like on Zooms and things, like, oh, I can't believe this and this and this. I can't believe people are doing this and this and this. And I was kind of thinking, this sounds like my family. This sounds like what my dad's doing right now. Like, I was kind of like, but it was embarrassing in some ways to be like, oh yeah, you're talking about my dad. But also there was a part of me that wanted to defend my dad, even though he was doing some crazy ass shit in terms of COVID precautions. Do you see what I'm saying? So it was like, there was a way that COVID really, really, I think, magnified some of these class divisions. And these class divisions, as you definitely pointed out earlier, 100% apply also to the Black community. They're not just, they don't just apply to white people. They also apply to the Latino community. They also apply to the Black community. So I think that these class divisions really affect the way that we navigate the world. So for me, I do feel like I was upwardly mobile, and that undeniably benefited me. Like, undeniably. I do not feel like, oh, I was polished and I regret getting these degrees. I don't regret getting these degrees. I like living in a house. I like having health insurance. I like not being financially precarious, but at the same time, I like green space, all the stuff I didn't have in the same way when I was growing up. I love all this stuff. It's great. At the same time, I feel like there's a way that I am, like, I don't know, just like there is a way that my edges are beveled a bit in certain spaces within academia, because they have to be. And so many of my students still today are overwhelmingly from wealthier backgrounds. And so I often find myself like, I know that I'm code switching in a way in terms of how I comport myself with certain friends versus other groups of friends.
But is it okay? That's interesting, and I want to ask you this. And I was talking to Ray Reed about this. The Chris Rock bit, the N words. I'm sure you've seen the N words of Black, unless you. Just
of course. Okay, I mean, anyone who is, of course.
Okay. So the thing about that bit that I laughed at it, but I was like, I don't know if this is 100% true. There's this weird thing where, and you're talking about it now with being a teacher. I'm trying to work with how to ask this question or present this as a kind of a discussion topic for us. There's a respect for education, even within poor and working class environments. There's a reason why people listen to the dude that talks at the barbershop out of his ass. It's because he's read a couple books, right? And he can quote some things. So we do have a certain regard for education, but we also have a certain regard for success. And what you're pointing out is how those things are going to look very different in the naked eye of, you know, a capitalist understanding, a consumerist understanding, I should say, of what success looks like. So if you're a professor, you have to look like a successful professor that I saw on television in the 80s and 90s. That means you have a house and family and all these things. And you're probably not going to have that because A, you have the freedom to do what you want as a woman, a single woman. you have your own income, so you don't have to be tied to some goddamn man.
Yeah.
And you're learning
Yeah.
all those newfangled things about femininity. So there's a lot going on that's probably going to be a bit contradictory. And to me, it's that contradiction that makes the navigation so frustrating, because I've never really liked the term code switching, because there's
okay.
professional Jason, and there's Jason with his friends, and there's Jason with his
Yeah.
kids. There's Jason with a love interest. That's not the same fucking guy. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Me with my 6-year-old, I'm not fucking telling him, hey, guess what? There's this big ass fucking chick and she went out with me the other night. I totally smashed.
And she's
I'm
from
not
West
talking to him.
Virginia, son.
And
She's from West
Virginia.
Virginia.
You know what that means? You know what that means? Gapping her teeth. Gapping her teeth.
WV. Oh, actually, WV could go a lot of different directions. Okay,
Wide Vagina, West Virginia. That's my favorite place. Miles guy's got great dick, son.
You said it. You said it.
Like,
I didn't say
don't
it.
look.
You said it.
I don't look at that as code switching, because there's homegirls that you have, and maybe I'm wrong here. There's homegirls that you have that you probably grew up with, maybe you're tight with, and you're like, girl, man, I haven't fucked my boyfriend. And there's professional homies that you have, and you're like, you know, I have a nice life. You're not having that same conversation with them. Do you, or let's do, or how do you feel around that?
Okay, so I'm going to give an example. Earlier, I don't know if this was like on the live stream or not, but you had this story about how your mom would kick in the door when you were like watching TV.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a generalization, but in my experience, when I talk to people from lower middle class, working class, or poor backgrounds who will talk about a moment of violence that they experienced as a child with a parent, it's almost always a source of comedy. And it's just like hilarious. And so when you told me the story about your mom like knocking down the door, my first instinct was to laugh.
Yeah.
Okay. Like, this is funny. And even though my mom didn't necessarily, come in like the feds or like the SWAT team, she had her own version of that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, because she had 4 kids in 6 years. My mom was not fucking around.
Well, she was.
Well, that's true. That is a good point. That is a very good point. She did so very efficiently and at very fertile times as well. So, okay. So what I've noticed though is sometimes like I'll share a story that I think is funny about something my parents did that was disciplinary in some way or punitive in some way. I cannot tell these stories around a lot of people within the more academic milieu, or people or my friend or many of my friends who come from more middle class, upper middle class, affluent backgrounds, because as soon as I tell the story, they want to do like outreach or like, oh no, what happened to you? You were traumatized. That sounds horrible. Oh my goodness. I didn't realize you grew up in a house like that. Like, just, I start feeling like, no, I thought this was funny. Why can't I have this be funny? I want this to be funny. And the thing is, you and I both know something can be funny and traumatic. And in fact, most trauma has a slice of humor to it. And I think that there's an aspect where I feel like a lot of times there are parts of my sense of humor that I just have to really sand down, because I'll think something is funny and other people will be like, that's not funny. Like, this horrible thing happened to you. Like, can I give you another example? So
please.
I remember I used to go to the dance club, and like, if you've been in the dance club and some dude comes behind you and you can kind of feel his dick in the small of your back, I would call that getting spонed, because it's kind of like spooning on a bed, but it's like with a boner. So it'd be like, oh, I got spонed. That sometimes also happens, like, if you are spooning with someone and then like their dick's all of a sudden in the small of your back, it's like, I got spонed. So like, I always thought getting spонed was kind of funny. Like, and I'm not saying like men should just go out and spone women. That's not what I'm okay, this is not the message I'm bringing here. Okay. But at the same time, I always thought that like this was a funny thing. Like, oh yeah, like I'm just dancing. I'm like, oh, I got spонed. Okay, I'm gonna move over here. I'm moving over here now. So I shared this with some friends, and like also I want to acknowledge, like, I'm a feminist film critic. Like, I write about feminism a lot. I consider myself a feminist, but I will sometimes, run into conflict or realize that, like, if I talk about getting sponed with some people, they're like, you were sexually assaulted. And I was like, I really don't think I was. I really
he wasn't
think
all the way hard. It was half chub. It was half chub. It was fine.
Yeah, no, exactly. I'm just kind of like, no, I was okay. And the thing is, part of it is that, I guess, for me, I feel like there's so much actual suffering in the world. There's so much actual suffering and there is very real sexual assault that not just women endure, but men and non-binary people, all sorts of folks endure. And I just kind of feel like I don't want to call getting sponed sexual assault. Like, it's not that big of a deal compared to that. And I think that sometimes, I know I'm generalizing right now, but I will make this generalization. I think that sometimes people from working class backgrounds or more lower middle class backgrounds or people from poverty, they have a clearer-eyed view of like what constitutes suffering. And I think sometimes people from extremely comfortable, protected backgrounds see any type of like misfortune, any type of transgression as being like violent and like horrible and traumatic. And I just don't move through the world that way. I think because I think of like, oh, this is so much worse, like, or this is so much worse. Like, getting sponed is not that big of a deal compared to this and this and this. So I don't know. I think that that's also like, I'm generalizing right now.
No, people are loving the sponing, by the way.
I mean, I would, please give me credit. I would love if I blow up in any kind of viral way. I mean, I'm 45 years old. It might be too late for me, but if I blow up in any kind of way and it's for sponing, I'd be happy with that, because I think sponing is
we
like
did
a
it with
very
Norm
creative
Finkelstein and
portmanteau.
Gooning. Norm
What's
Finkelstein and
that?
Gooning. Yeah, Norm Finkelstein was on this show talking about gooning, which is like masturbating for a long period of time and not coming. And that clip went viral for everyone else but this show.
That's hilarious.
Gooning.
I'll say this, you should know. I was on. Go ahead.
You were gooning?
No, I was not gooning. I feel like I don't like to waste time. I'm very efficient. I'm very efficient. I have like a go-to.
But you know what that is?
I have like a Rolodex in my mind. Here now I'm dating myself, but I have like a Rolodex of images.
This is why you're to me, that's like peak. That's what I'm looking for. If I was ever like find the perfect woman, it'd be the woman that's like, look, I don't have all day for this sex stuff. We're gonna get it in. We're gonna get it done.
I think it's good to have
to do with my life.
I mean, quality is good. I mean, I have nothing against like having sex for a long time, but yeah, I feel like sometimes like
how long's a long time in your 40s?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know, like maybe like a solid hour. That feels like a pretty long investment.
Of straight of doing it, or like all the other stuff that goes with it?
Well, that's a good question.
You want to go to
this is it depends on whether or not I'm high, because I feel like if I'm high, I have no idea. And if I'm high, it's actually really fun to kind of like have things go on for a really long time, because you can kind of fall asleep and then get back into it, and then you can kind of fall asleep again, or you're like listening to music and then all of a sudden you're having sex again, and that's kind of fun because you're just kind of like, you lose track of time. But I think if I'm not high, if I actually have paying attention to how much time is going on, I don't know. The clock's the ticking. I don't want it to be like, I mean, I'm glad I hope that resonates with you, because I feel like that's something that, like, during the pandemic, that was something that was really great. It's just like taking gummies regularly and just not having as many like deadlines. I was never really into weed in any kind of real way until like my 40s, which I really feel like your 40s are a good time to start experimenting with weed. Because, like, I don't know, you have other things kind of figured out, hopefully. So I don't know. That's my take. So I wanted to say earlier, this had to do. Go ahead. I feel like this had to do something you said.
I was going to say something along the lines of. You said men get sponed as well. I saw a video of a tattoo artist recently. I don't know if I need to start sending you. I'll ask Bert if it's okay if we can.
I'm going to meet Bert in person next week.
Yeah, he told me. But you're.
Go ahead.
Wait, he's going there, right?
He's going to my poetry reading in Los Angeles, and I'm going to meet him and Joe. I'm really excited about it.
Next, what day? Saturday?
No, Thursday night. I'm going to be in LA Thursday through Sunday for this conference. So,
if you're around Saturday, I think I'm going up Saturday with. I'll just send you a private message, but I believe I'm going up Saturday, to watch the 50-year reunion of one of the greatest. You guys are going to call me Yacht Rock, but Charisma, which is a bunch of dudes from like Toto and like a guy David Garfield.
Oh, cool.
That's going to be in LA, so I think I might be going up for that. And then I love hanging out with Bert and making fun of him and Joe because they're just fashionistas. Jesus fucking Christ, those two people.
Okay, speaking of fashion, I wore this on purpose. So this is like a shirt that mocks its own roots. So this is like faux Chanel. It's like made like fake Chanel, and then it has Paris like really obnoxious on the chest. Yeah. So to me, this shirt kind of emblemizes some of the themes of the show because it's like mocking the kind of Chanel look, but at the same time, it's a cool top and it's well made. So I love my Paris shirt.
But you were talking about men and getting sponed.
Oh yeah.
And there's a video of a dude doing a tattoo, I guess for a cop. And he's just doing a chest piece, and the guy's got his whole shirt off. He's getting a chest piece done. And the tattoo artist is tattooing him, and the man getting his tattoo done kind of moves his arm off the tattoo couch seat table.
Yeah.
And it's kind of resting on the tattoo artist's leg, and the tattoo artist
okay.
Then you see his hand disappear.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and he starts rubbing on the tattoo artist's balls.
Wow.
And the tattoo artist jumps up and punches him in the face.
Wow.
And the dude is so stunned by he's not knocked out, but he's just kind of stunned. And the tattoo artist is like, get out of here. And I was like, I've never. He punched the cop, and something happened to the cop. I think he got in trouble. I mean, you can't go around touching people's balls. That's not cool.
No, you can't. Especially if they're holding like a needle gun or something. I feel like that's a bad choice. I don't care
if they're holding groceries. If I was
like at the club with a needle gun, I don't think I would get sponed very often. It's just like, why would you do that? You shouldn't
just go around coochie cooing people's nuts. That's just not healthy. I don't care who you are. I'd be weirded out. I love Linda Carter. I think Linda Carter is awesome. This is one of my first crushes. If Linda Carter came up to me and coochie cooed my nuts, I'd probably push her or something. I'd be like, what the fuck is wrong with you, Linda Carter?
I like how this is kind of going full circle back to the Different Strokes episode. Right? I mean, who knew? I didn't know this was going to do that. I thought we were going to talk about economic disparities.
No, we're going to talk about the fact you don't want to go in the bike shop. You never want to go to the bike shop. You don't want the dance club isn't the bike shop. Hey guys, not the bike shop.
I wonder how much that episode raised carbon emissions around the United States because people were afraid of getting their bikes fixed. And they were like, well,
every bike shop owner likes to fuck kids.
That's really not. It was bad.
Somebody says Linda Carter gets a pass. You say that until she touches your nuts without you asking, okay? Fucking remember that, man. Can't just go around touching nuts like that. Just like I can't go around touching women. I can't touch a woman I don't know.
No, you shouldn't do that.
Even if that's why I don't go to strip clubs. It's weird for me. Even though I'm like, I don't know if I should do it. I don't know.
Best to avoid. Best to avoid.
Oh, and I did want to tell you a funny story about realizing I was in a room with people that did not share my upbringing. I used to work when I wasn't touring, I would work these music festivals, and we were working at Coachella.
Oh,
There was a bunch of us, and I was doing contract work for another one of your St. Louis people, Jack Dorsey, when he owned Square. I think.
Oh yeah.
And so we were at the Square people's place. It was a small handful of us, but it would happen to be all the black people were at the Square people's place. and a couple of the Black people actually worked for Square as well. In one in New York and one in St. Louis, actually, at the St. Louis office. And we were all telling stories about where we grew up, and a couple people that worked at Square actually grew up in the Bay Area as well, but different parts of the Bay Area. And as we're telling these growing up stories, and people are having a few drinks, right? I guess our stories were, to your point, the traumatic ones. Like, don't you hate it when you was growing up back in the day, motherfuckers just be shooting? Like, y'all ever dodge a bullet? Like, this whole sky light up. And we all turn into Richard Pryor. Don't you hate when crackers call the cops on you and you got to get arrested? And so all of our white colleagues slowly put their drinks down and just left the room.
Oh, wow.
And then we looked around and we're like, huh, well, there you go. It's one of those. That's just what
well,
it
here's
is.
a question for you though, Jason. Here's a question for you. So like, have you ever found yourself in a situation like that with like a group of Black people where some of the Black people are from more affluent or middle class backgrounds and also respond similarly? Because I've found that to be sometimes the case as well. Like where
you gotta be there's a certain kind of, this is the thing about that pisses me off. Ask Coop about this when you see him to see how he responds. There's a certain kind of cat that'll say that to you, like, oh man, that sounds fucked up. I didn't live like that at all. And they'll be comfortable with that.
Mm-hmm.
But most people will try to act like they can relate to that in some capacity. So it may not be their life, but like, oh, I went to my cousin's house this one time and they had some Negro shit happen around them. So I totally can relate. So I don't kind of back to the whole thing. Like, I have conversations around who I like. These stories don't hit the same way when I talk with my neighbor. He didn't grow up in the same kind of environment. So,
that makes sense.
He doesn't want to hear these. We'll tell different. All kids have similar youthful indiscretion stories, wearing the wrong clothes, trying to talk to someone that doesn't like you, and failing. These things resonate throughout ethnicities and class boundaries. But some of the stories I would probably only tell a certain type of friend because they would relate with mom kicking in the door, lying to a bill collector, right? Drug parties at your house. Like, there's a certain friend that can probably relate to that, or family member that can relate to that, and that's where that story stays with me. And I don't feel like I'm being less of myself because I don't want to tell that with Sam Cedar on the Majority Report. At that point, I'm just using my life to give me some sort of authenticity, right? Because that's back to TV shows. That's my problem with the Fresh Prince. My problem with the Fresh Prince is Will Smith becomes Black authenticity with his minstrel show, and Carlton, which is funny because Carlton is like this, oh, well, he's a coon. I was like, well, why? Everything in his life is Black. He got Black ass family. His dad married a Black ass woman, which says a lot in Bell fucking Air. And
no kidding. Vivian.
And they have a Black ass butler, and everybody his sister brings home to fuck is a nigga. So, or Black person. So why? I'm trying not to say the N word around white people. Why do we look at him like he's less than because he's not, doing a minstrel show like Will Smith is doing? So that's the problem, and that really becomes a problem, especially for people my age. So I'm like, dude, if you didn't grow up with, that's fine. Like, you don't have to go search for a hood story to think that I can't relate to you. Like, it's okay. I've also lived in a nice affluent neighborhood. I made a couple dollars in my 20s, and now I think it's a nice neighborhood. It's in Mexico, but most of my neighbors are white, and I know how to fucking. What do you mean there's different kind of folks? Like, I know how to fucking talk around them and act. So I wouldn't say that if you look at that as code switching, then you're the worst person because you're telling me that you're the same every fucking time around your kids, around your mom, like around like none of that changes. And I'm like, go fuck yourself. Like I'm a multi-dimensional motherfucker, and I'm not going to be the same around my, like I said, my 6-year-old than I am around Eileen right now. He's just not going to understand these stories.
I mean, I think that's interesting. Like the term, like I think you brought this up from the Jacobin essay, like identity suspension or something. Maybe that's a better way of putting it, identity suspension, because I feel like to some extent, okay, code switching in terms of how we speak. Of course, everyone to some extent is a different version of themselves with different people, and that's just how everyone at least should be. At least if you don't adapt to different social situations, you probably have a social problem. But so I agree with you there. I wonder if with identity suspension, and that's not a term I coined, and I don't think Melissa Osborne coined it. I think that they referenced someone else who did. But I do feel like there have been times where I have kind of curated what I share about my background because it will help me to assimilate into the context that I'm in. So I feel like sometimes I do it unwittingly, and other times I'm consciously doing it. Like I'm not going to share this, or I'm not going to share this. I'm going to share this part because this is the part that people are going to relate to. This is the part that's going to make me seem like I'm more from this background. And I hate to say that it's even necessary to do that, but in some cases it can be. I don't know if you've ever experienced this, Jason, but sometimes when people from affluent backgrounds, when they learn that they're friends with someone who is not, it becomes a source of discomfort because they feel uncomfortable about some of the myths of meritocracy that they grew up with, or they feel uncomfortable realizing that like not everyone had it this easy. And I think even knowing that someone had it kind of easy, like a lot of people don't realize that until they know someone and are friends with someone who is not. Like my partner, amazing person, is from a very affluent background. And there have been many times where we've had discussions, and I could tell that initially it can sometimes be, I don't think anymore, but maybe in the beginning, it was maybe a source of like, not discomfort, but just kind of like, I don't know, like a lack of, it could be sometimes like a thing that brings distance. I actually think part of the reason we're even still together is that he has curiosity, and he's not somebody who's like, doesn't want me to talk about things because it makes him uncomfortable about his class background. I think he's been very open to realizing that his class background is not, typical in any way. Whereas I think a lot of people do feel uncomfortable about it. It took me a long time to realize that, though. It really did. I remember my dad worked for the Postal Service for 30 years, and he had some funny stories of like getting chased by dogs when he was a letter carrier and stuff like that. And sometimes I would share the stories of my dad getting like chased by dogs. And I realized that some people just were uncomfortable with these stories. And I thought the stories were entertaining. So this is just a good example about some, I don't know, code switching might not be the best word, but like identity suspension, where I just kind of felt like, okay, it's this group of people just doesn't like, they're not going to get it. They're not going to get it. And the last thing I want them to do is feel sorry for me. And I have to say, like, you were talking about one of the quotes from the essay is about how only my inner circle knows like my real working class background. But to some extent, that's less true because in the last 2 or 3 years, honestly, I've written about it a lot more. I used to not write about it, and I've written about it more over the last 2 to 3 years. And I've been compelled by a number of factors, not least is which is the polarization and this kind of like growing chasm where upper middle class people interact with lower middle class people and even middle class people even less often, I think. And I think that's probably true across race. Maybe it's not, but so I think I've been compelled to write about it more because of that. So I think more of my colleagues are realizing it, but I will say some of my colleagues who read the Jacobin essay reached out to me and like said they enjoyed it, but also were like kind of reassuring me, like, you belong. And I'm like, no. I don't need you to tell me I belong. Like I didn't write this essay so that I could be, I didn't write this essay, and I never write about my own class background because I want rich people or affluent people to tell me that I belong, or to corroborate a sense of belonging. Like, oh no, you've made it, girl. You're successful. That's not why I'm writing these essays. I feel, and that's actually why one of the reasons I did not want to write this type of essay, because I feel very uncomfortable when people like when their source of feedback is kind of sympathy, like, oh, I'm so sorry you had it so hard. Because I feel very allergic to that reaction, because I feel like I had all sorts of things that were great about my childhood, and there are all sorts of things that I feel grateful for. And like, compared to so many people, I was very fortunate. So like, the last thing I want is someone like, throwing a pity parade for me. Like, that's absurd. Go teach at the prison. Just like, what the fuck? I don't, seriously, like, I don't want that. But I find it something that a lot of upper middle class people are kind of conditioned, and I think they mean well when they show pity or sympathy if you share something that's about like class difference, or class I guess just not having certain opportunities or access. But I'm trying to challenge that, though, because I feel like the main reason I write about my class background now is because I want people who are not from I want people who are from a more affluent background to actually think about how other people live, because or how other people grew up. Not because I think awareness necessarily leads to solidarity. It doesn't always lead to solidarity. We know that. But I think it sometimes can nudge someone in the direction of greater solidarity once you actually understand, like, wait a second, Eileen did this and this. Eileen did this. Eileen worked at Steak and Shake. Eileen worked at IHOP. Eileen did this. Like, maybe it will change the way they treat the person who works at IHOP. That's a small thing, but I think it's a good thing. Maybe it will change the way they think about, what's worth, I don't know. I feel like I don't write anything about class background because I want to elicit sympathy. I do it because I want people to think about their own lives in a more introspective way. And feel, I guess, I don't know, just a tiny bit less ignorant about other people around them. And I also think that, like, for a lot of people who are upwardly mobile, like, performing high culture or being ensconced in high culture, like, it's very easy for me to assimilate into these bougie circles. Like, I'm an art and film critic. Like, I go to Sundance, I go to the New York Film Festival. Like, when I go to these places, I'm surrounded by people, the majority of which are from very affluent backgrounds and very cosmopolitan coastal backgrounds. And I'm very used to being in that world. And honestly, I love a lot about that world. But I also realize, like, there are not a lot of Eileen Giselles in the space. So I feel like I want to write about this stuff so that people realize, like, okay, I need to check myself in terms of, like, what I say or how classism informs the way I comport myself. Because, I think that all of us are raised in all of us have been raised in a world that is racist in so many ways. All of us have been raised in a world that is classist and sexist in so many ways. So we absorb all these ideas, and it's almost impossible to really extricate ourselves. But I think at least we can try to, to challenge those things or even see it in ourselves. So at least I try to do that, because I'm certainly not, as you may have noticed during this episode, I am hardly a font of virtue.
Well, it's kind of like the Roseanne thing, right? Because there's these all or nothing binary depictions of what people might perceive as your life. And if I say that my mom was a certain way, now she's Precious's mother, right?
And I didn't see that. I didn't see that. Yeah.
But that's kind of, there's people that assume.
No,
right?
I understand what you're saying, though. I totally get what you're saying.
And,
Yeah.
and I don't dig that.
Monique. You did not have Monique as a mom.
No, you know what? Not a lot of people did. There's a very small minority of people in the world that have lived in the post World War II, actually, no, let's say post Good Society era, that lived with Monique's mom, because there's a different way we look at children. 70s moving forward. So it's to I watch some of these movies and I'm like, man, I've known my mom had a problem. It's bad. I've had friends that I had family members their moms had way worse problems with dope.
Yeah.
Like on the street, having to, and even they understood love from their mother.
Yep.
As difficult as that may sound to hear, but these kind of binary depictions of, well, we have to explain what a bad life looks like, so we're gonna make this like, I hate you. You quit fucking my boyfriend. It's like, wow.
No, I mean, oh my God, Monique talking about the titty sucking in that movie. That was just like, that was where I was like, this is next level.
That movie, Lee Daniels is just like, what does the white gaze need right now? Niggadry. Okay. I know the woman for this. She is large. Her name is Monique. Just watch. I can smell the Oscars and the money.
I mean, seriously, and she got the Oscar for that, didn't she? Didn't she get that?
She got the just like Denzel got the Denzel and Glory. One of the best, right? The tier, Denzel in Philadelphia. Nothing. He goes around, my nigga. We give him an Oscar.
I'm really glad you brought up Glory.
He didn't win shit for Glory. He didn't win
Glory
shit.
is such a good Denzel movie because he's so young and so kind of innocent seeming. He's not yet wizened. And actually, he's great in Philadelphia too. I rewatched Philadelphia and I was surprised how much I liked it. I thought it was good. I was worried.
Right? And you go, Tom Hanks, I believe, won the Oscar for Philadelphia. And he did a great job, right? Bay Area man.
No, he did, but still, that's a really good point. And actually, you know what? I just rewatched, this is connected. I just rewatched Ghost. Yeah. So for the first time, I think in my life, I saw it on the big screen because when it came out, I was a little kid. And so, and it was also rated R. So I didn't watch it when it came out in the theaters in 1990s. I think in 1990, I think I saw it at like a sleepover or something. And I probably wasn't supposed to see it at the sleepover because it was rated R.
Yeah.
What's that?
What a depressing sleepover.
Well, I mean, it was romantic, it was very popular among teenage girls. So I rewatched it and it was interesting because it was part of a queer showcase at Alamo Drafthouse Theater about like films that have queer subtext. And like, it was really interesting hearing about like the guy who wrote Ghost was gay. Like a lot of gay people at the time saw the film as a kind of metaphor for like all the deaths that were going on in New York City, like sudden deaths and like how to grieve these, which I had no idea. And like the whole thing where like Whoopi Goldberg is like, making out with Demi Moore, but they kind of like change it and make Sam all of a sudden. So I get that there is a queer subtext to Ghost and it's interesting. And I have to say, like, I still thought Whoopi Goldberg was really funny in that role, but there were moments where it is cringy because it is very much like playing
Molly,
a certain.
You in danger, girl.
Exactly. Like, it's hard not to laugh at that because of the fact that, like, Whoopi, I think, is so funny in that role. Like, I really do feel like she was brilliant in that role. But I can also see why so many people have a problem with the role because there are parts of it where she's playing a caricature 100%. But I will say there are other parts of it, and it might be 20 to 30% of her lines, but there are parts of her lines where she's not in that caricature anymore. And she seems like a smart, discerning person who is like respected. And I don't know. I hope somebody writes an essay really exploring like her character, Oda Brown, because I don't know. I was expecting it to be worse. I was expecting it to be even cringier. But there were moments I felt like, I don't know. I cried at the end of Ghost. I did. I cried again.
So my mother worked at a store called Thrifty's.
Okay.
And that's now, I think CVS bought it out.
Okay.
So my mom would get, you remember back in the day, stores would sell VHSs? Like stores like a little convenience store.
Ghost was huge.
Ghost was huge. So my mom would bring when the VHSs would go on discount, she would get an extra discount. So it'd probably be like a couple bucks for her. So she'd be like, "Here, I got you a movie. Shut up." But the movie was whatever was popular, and that was on a discount. Yeah. So Ghost, I got to see Home Alone, stuff like that. Pretty Woman. I watched some movies that might be more geared towards an older white woman as a young preteen way too many times. And so, like, Pretty Woman. It's like, hey, you guys want to watch this movie, Pretty Woman? No, Jay, because we're straight and you're weird. But I watched Ghost. I'm not trying to be funny at all. I've probably seen Ghost at least 100 times because it was one of the few things that I had to
Whoa.
watch. And so watching that movie so many times and thinking about Whoopi Goldberg's character, because I was my mom's luggage for a long time, right? It was just me and her. So
Yeah.
she wanted to go see a movie, I went with her, whatever that movie was.
Yeah.
So Whoopi Goldberg was like a popular Black person in the
Totally.
80s. She was kind of the only Black person in the 80s. And if you look at some of her work, which I don't know how much she talks about now because I don't really follow Whoopi Goldberg,
Yeah.
but she played some roles that she might regret, Burglar, Jumpin' Jack Flash, the
Yeah.
Sister Act movies, Oda Mae Jenkins. You work where you can get work. I understand that to a certain extent. And I think she tried to bring some sort of, I don't want to say professionalism, but she didn't want to, drape the role in so much stereotypical inwarding. And
Yeah.
if you watch the movie Ghost, that character actually is a full fleshed out character, even though so many comedians nowadays use her
Yeah.
and Michael Clark Duncan as magical Negroes
Mm.
as a trope in film, right? The Green Mile
Mhm.
guy, Bagger
Mhm.
Vance,
Mhm.
Radio. There's all these magical Negroes that have this moment in the 80s and 90s where we just are obsessed with these Black figures. But when you watch Ghost, I mean, there's some complexity in that movie that we all miss. And first of all, it's like Patrick Swayze's character is kind of a piece of shit, right? He's a
He is. Oh
mergers
my
and
God, totally.
acquisitions guy.
I mean, he's not great. He's not great. Although I
No.
will say Patrick Swayze was perfectly cast for that role though, because he has a
Yes.
kind of goofiness to him and he's a dancer. So there's a physicality to his role in Ghost that he masterfully performs. Like he's able to physically use his body to do all sorts of things that I think a lot of actors would not have been able to do. And also, like, I don't know, there is a sweetness to his friendship with Oda Mae. Like, he actually fought to get Whoopi Goldberg cast in that role. He was like, I will
Really?
not play this role. Yeah, I learned this from the Alamo, like, little queer cinema spiel. They talked about all sorts of stuff in the background of the film. Evidently, Patrick Swayze said, I will not play this role if you do not cast Whoopi Goldberg in this role. So I think they maybe had a real friendship or maybe a real respect for each other. And I feel like it comes across on the screen. And I agree with you because there are ways in which her character is such a caricature, but it's endowed with these moments that are a lot more than that. And I think that part of what I liked about her character is that she doesn't actually want to be psychic. She doesn't
Yeah.
want to have this gift. She finds it a burden and she doesn't want to be helping people. She's not like a overly virtuous character. And I find that very refreshing because I feel like she does many virtuous things, but it's reluctantly. And I think that that's actually a binary that also happens a lot in film and television where you have a character that's either like a caricatured
Mhm.
villain or is just like a font of virtue, and neither are relatable. And I think her character actually is more realistic in a lot of ways than a lot of other Black characters that were on screen at the time, and even now in some ways. So I don't
She
know.
did some
I
she
feel
did some
like
interesting things, right? She did some interesting work where she played a maid in this one movie with Doogie Howser. I
oh,
think they were
that's
supposed to be
right.
in
I
South
forgot about
Africa.
that
I
one.
can't remember the name of it.
Yeah,
Fun fact about Patrick Swayze, you are correct.
yeah.
His mother was a dance instructor, so he grew up dancing. He blew out his knee as a young man before he acted. So there's two
Ooh,
things that happen in Dirty Dancing, another movie I watched way too many times as a young
yes.
man. I think I was 9.
Okay.
Definitely seen Dirty Dancing over 100 times. We'll watch it. If it came on right now, I'd watch it. Feel no shame. Feel no shame at all. You watching Dirty
Just
Dancing?
like,
Yes, I am watching Dirty Dancing. You can go fuck right off if you got a problem with it. Um, Patrick Swayze really is fighting with Jennifer Grey because the scene where she's giggling is real. So they kept in an actual fight. because he was getting frustrated with her because she kept laughing at the scene where his hand's supposed to go down like that. And the final scene where he does the leap because he blew out his knee, he's like, I can't do this again. They're like, we need one more take. We need one more take. We missed it. So that scene is him. I think his knee was like bone on bone. Some insane shit like that. And he nails that thing. And so when you see him like, yeah, he's like in excruciating pain.
Oh my God.
But yeah, I'm a Patrick Swayze fan. That dude was he was great.
I mean, he's good in the role. And Demi is also, I will say, I thought Demi was better in Ghost than The Substance. Like, I like The Substance.
Really?
Yes.
Can I ask you a question before? Okay, tell me why. I'm gonna shut up. I'm gonna shut up.
No, it's okay. So this is the reason. In Ghost, Molly's character, I think, is actually not written as well as a lot of the other characters. She doesn't have a lot of lines. But Demi Moore is really good at seeming both kind of extremely sad, but also kind of open-minded. And usually, I'll just say, usually when white women cry on screen, I have like a very low tolerance for it because it feels very cliche, and the way that it's presented feels very cliche. Every time she was like crying on screen, I found it to be very like, I don't know, just seemed very genuine and warranted. And the scene where Sam has been shot and she's like screaming, will somebody help us? Will somebody help me? It is awful. Like, I mean, they could have edited that differently. They could have had, you know, the way that was done was really different. And I don't know, there's something about, she seems so wide-eyed and curious, but also so devastated. And I guess with The Substance, I thought she was great in The Substance. I did. But I also felt like The Substance, it's almost like the flip side. She's playing like this indignant, frustrated, angry, aging woman. And because that movie is so cranked up to the next level, it's so hyper stylized, and every character is kind of a caricature in a way. She does a great job, but I didn't actually feel as connected to her as Elizabeth Sparkles. But you tell me. I can tell that you wanna weigh in on Demi and The Substance.
I just want to add. Look, I want to ask you because I am not a film critic, and whenever I hear real film critics talk, I shut up. And I was on a film show some time ago. It's a pretty good show. It's called Movies Against Capitalism. I'm surprised they haven't reached out to you.
I would love to be on that show. Yeah.
And they had someone on talking about The Substance, and this person was saying that The Substance isn't a feminist movie. And I was like, is this one of those gender studies takes where you're just going to be smarter than everybody in the room? As someone that says they're a feminist, and you are a film, the first time you were on this show was to talk about film. Bert told me to watch The Substance. I watched it going to sleep. I woke up at the end very confused. So I watched it again. I was enjoying what I was watching, and this was, you know, it's one of those things like, right? Yeah. So I watched it again, wide awake, blew my mind. I watched it maybe a week or two ago, blew my mind again. Tell me, is this not a feminist movie? And what am I missing?
Okay. I think it is a feminist movie. I think that I have a broad definition of what constitutes a feminist movie. I thought The Substance was hilarious. Like, I laughed a lot through the last act where things get really crazy, really bloody, really over the top. I liked that part. I liked when it didn't take itself that seriously. I mean, obviously the movie is like a bald indictment of like lookism, ageism, all of that stuff. And it's so like every character is a caricature of just like the worst person in so many ways. My favorite scenes in The Substance were actually the binge eating scenes because they were really disgusting and kind of contributed to the body horror in a different way than I expected. I thought the body horror was actually pretty great in the movie too. Have you seen Titan? Have you seen Titan, the French movie?
No.
It
No, tell me
is.
more.
I think it's like, so I loved Titan. It won the Palme d'Or like 3 years ago. It's in some ways a lot more fucked up in the substance. It's a little less bloody, but it's very disturbing. But it involves like automotive body horror. Like this woman like fucks a car and she like has like a kind of like a car baby growing inside of her. And she's also like a serial killer. So it's a really,
I'm
the
in.
plot's a little convoluted. The plot is a little convoluted, but I actually thought Titan was similar to the substance, but did it better. I think because the characters were written a little bit more. I don't know. The characters were a little bit more well-rounded in Titan, even though they're still caricature. They're still like kind of playing certain tropes. I mean, but the substance, I feel like. I mean, is it a feminist film? I think in a lot of ways it is. I often think films are feminist when other people don't. But I also will say there are some films that people think are feminist. Like, for example, Wonder Woman's a great example. Like, I think that like all the strong women films, all the films where you have this like, indefatigable badass who's completely virtuous and always succeeds, those strong women films, they're often peddled as being very feminist, but I actually think I find them pretty empty in a lot of ways because I feel like most women don't relate to that at all. And I also really want to resist the idea that women are naturally more virtuous than men. I've often just, I'm pretty outspoken with my dismissal of what I think is a really essentialist idea in that way. Like the idea that like, well, women are just better people. And I don't like that. I think what ends up happening too is that idea that women are better, it was invented so that women's job could be to civilize men. And then it becomes like our job to civilize men. I don't want another job. I don't want to civilize any of y'all. Like, I don't want to do that. So I don't feel like that's that kind of, I don't know. A lot of feminist films are about women who kind of like are just really good and civilized men. I find them to, I don't actually find that to be very feminist. So I don't know. I like the substance. I actually, for my Oscars party, had like a Suze cocktail that was like made with Suze and then was in a syringe. So we ordered syringes for the party, and then like, each cocktail was like in the syringe, and like then we did it like a Suze spritz. So it was like Suze was in the syringe, and then we found like a non-alcoholic version for the non-drinkers. But it was so much fun using the syringe to serve the drinks. And I also made an Elizabeth Sparkles trophy for the person who won the got the most correct on the ballot. So I thought I liked the movie, but I didn't love it. So yeah, check out Titan. I mean, it's very disturbing.
Was it because of the way it was shot in that way, where most of it was done in the bedrooms, in the living room and kind of the bathroom? Was it too stark for you?
No, I don't think that's what. I don't think it was. It wasn't too stark. It wasn't too stark. I guess I think that the movie, there are ways in which it flirted with. I mean, it obviously was like not realistic in so many ways. But then I feel like there were moments where it seemed like it was trying to be more realistic, and I felt like it actually kind of made the whole thing feel harder to believe because like, someone as famous as Elizabeth Sparkles in Los Angeles would probably live on her own, like in some kind of gated neighborhood. My partner was pointing this out to me. This is very much, the substance is very much like a European's imagination of what Los Angeles wealth looks like, and like
point.
what Los Angeles celebrity looks like, because it's written by a French woman.
Because
and
Los Angeles wealth, it's very suburban. It's not
exactly.
so
It's not like Elizabeth Sparkles. No. So I feel like the movie is very much a European's fantasy of Los Angeles and Los Angeles, like in Hollywood life. And it's also like, hyperbolized, which is fine. But I feel like if you go into it that way, it's easier to understand. Yeah, Titan is really good. Julia DeCorno. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. What about Dennis Quaid's character not being a sexual predator to the stars, but when the dancers come in, they're like, "Oh, let's go fuck the help."
Oh,
that was like, to me, I was like, this is the most accurate Hollywood thing ever. It's like, yeah, you're not gonna go fuck Meryl Streep,
that part. Yeah, I didn't remember that part. I think that's, yeah. I guess part of it also is that Dennis Quaid's character being so openly ageist, I don't think that would ever happen so openly. I feel like part of
So
what's really like I feel like part of what's so insidious about lookism and ageism within Hollywood is that I don't think a lot of it's said out loud in the same way. It's just everyone kind of knows. So I doubted uh so much of it, and also like the way that like she's like an 80s kind of aerobics instructor, and yet it's somewhat contemporary because there are phones. It just felt like a total hodgepodge of the last, like a mashup of like the last 40 years of like American culture.
what one fitness person is that popular?
Exactly.
You're right. That's a television era thing.
Jane Fonda for a while, but of course Jane Fonda is so multifaceted,
Denise
has done
Austin
so
is
many.
another name. If you remember Denise
Yeah,
Austin on
exactly. It was like
ESPN.
Suzanne Summers had her little heyday with the
Suzanne
Thigh Master,
Summers, Thigh Master, yeah.
but like I feel like generally speaking, like that aerobic world of watching aerobics on TV, um, it it felt so retro that I enjoyed it, but it also kind of felt like I had a hard time feeling sorry for any of the characters, which is fine. But I think that for me, I mean, that's the thing is like, I thought a lot of the movie was very funny and over the top and very campy, especially at the end with just the monstrosity that she becomes and like the earring she puts on her like appendage. It's hilarious. I mean, it's really funny. And I don't understand how people don't think the movie is funny. And some people don't. I thought the movie was really funny. So I actually, Jason, I got to eat breakfast soon because I have not eaten breakfast yet.
No,
Um,
neither have I. Because as you know,
I need to eat something.
it's even earlier here in Mexico. Go do your thing. Thank you for hanging out with me. I did get to ask
Oh, it's so
one
much fun.
question
Okay.
on my question list. That was fine. I got to ask the one question. It was probably the most important one. Wherever you're watching or listening to this show, there's links in the description to Eileen's article, The High
Thank
Cost of
you.
Upward Mobility. Is that what it is? Did I
And
say
I
it
think
right?
it's like invisible cost or something like that.
The
I didn't even
invisible
put the
cost. Sorry, the invisible high
That's
cost of high class hair dye.
okay.
That's real. That shit ain't washing out in a day, guys. That's a
No,
real deal. That's where that money's going. That's where all that Jacobin money went. All
Jacobin still hasn't paid me.
$47.
I still haven't gotten paid.
Really?
No.
I'd be mad as fuck. I'd be like, check this out, homeboy. I'm not one of these regular
I know.
adjuncts.
Yeah. Jacobin's I will say, shout out to Megan Day. She's no longer my editor at Jacobin, but she was my editor for like the 5 pieces I wrote for them, and she's amazing. So she also helped make the essay what it is because she's a great editor. Editing is hard work and it's not paid very well. Thank you, Lula. Thank you for watching.
So go eat and have it, and hopefully I'll see you next week with.
Oh my God, that'd be amazing! I'd love to meet you in person. All right, everyone, have a great weekend.
Peace out. It's Eileen's show. Wherever you're watching or listening to the show, there's a link in the description to Eileen's article. I will be here the same bat time mañana. I'll be talking with another white lady. White Lady Spring. I don't know. Catherine Rye Jewell, and we'll be talking about the alternative scene, the rise of Lollapalooza. There's a documentary about Lollapalooza that we're going to be talking about. I saw it. I immediately hit Catherine up. We were going back and forth on dates. So I was like, you know what? We're going to do it this week. Let's do it Sunday. We're doing it live. So I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a great rest of your day. I have a ton of writing to do. And we are out.